Good evening, everybody. My name is Alexandre Molnar, and I am the president of Dynamically Speaking Toastmasters. Some of you might be saying, Toastmasters? We're at a Toastmaster meeting? That organization which develops communication and leadership skills? You are, because of Richard Lee Tai, who has been a member of our club for just about a year. Richard has made progress as a Toastmaster speaker, and along the way has delivered his first TEDx talk. As the King of Connections, Richard has also invited some of his global network of friends to our club. And now we have members in places like Toronto and New York City. Please help me welcome your host for tonight's meeting, Connection Coach, Richard Lee Tai.
Thank you, AA, for the introduction. I'd like to first begin with a land acknowledgement. So while we're gathering from all around the world, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm currently residing in Calgary, Alberta. Calgary is located in the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Siksika-Sitapi, comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Yahe Nakota First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. The Blackfoot name for the city of Calgary is Mohkinstsis, meaning elbow, referring to the Elbow River. By being on this land, we recognize our interconnectedness with all other beings that share this land, and through this web of connections, we have responsibilities to maintain good relations with all other beings through our day-to-day interactions. Thank you for the opportunity to share this space today and connect with one another. So, as AA said, my name is Richard Lee Tai, and I'll be your host for the panel discussion tonight. So it's so great to be able to see so many familiar faces, as well as some new ones. And if we had more time, I would go around to each person and ask them to introduce themselves. But for the purpose of the event today, I'd like everyone to introduce yourself in the chat. So you can say, tell us where you're calling from, which city you're calling from, and type that into the chat now. And we'll see where everyone is here. So there's a Calgary, also from Calgary, Red Deer, Calgary, Toronto, Canmore, Mexico, in a car, someone said. Tokyo, Japan. Oh, wow. Lethbridge, Red Deer, Ensenada, Mexico, Springfield, Ontario, Austin, Mexico, Strathmore. Eating in a car, yes. Eric is also in Mexico. Okay, wonderful. So it looks like everyone's from all over the place. And I also encourage you to keep interacting in the chat throughout the event. So a bit more about me. I am a TEDx speaker, and a few months ago, I delivered a TEDx talk on how to find excuses to connect. And so since then, I've launched a business called Excuses to Connect, which helps make meaningful connections easier through coaching, podcasting, workshops, public speaking, and events like these. I envision a world where the term excuse to connect becomes part of our common vocabulary and that you feel empowered to be a connector in your community. My personal motto is, you never know how any connection can transform your life. So I genuinely hope that you find lots of value from all the insights that the panelists have to share today. So how this event will be structured is that there'll be approximately 30 minutes of me asking questions to the panelists, followed by approximately 20 minutes of Q&A. So you can save your questions until then, when you'll be able to ask the panelists verbally. So the event's officially running for an hour from 7 to 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. But if you want to stay behind after 8 p.m., I'll be hosting some informal socializing. So I'll be putting people into some small breakout rooms, and this is an opportunity to apply the insights from the panelists and also connect with some new people. So as AA mentioned, I'm hosting this event as part of Toastmasters. I know there's lots of you here today that don't know what Toastmasters is. So it's an international organization helping people develop their public speaking and leadership skills. And my home club is called Dynamically Speaking Toastmasters. So part of the culture here is to use jazz hands as our way of showing applause. And so for the other dynamically speaking members that are here today, if we could just give an example of what we mean. We do this after each person's introduced and also after they're done speaking. And so I'll encourage you to do that throughout our event today. And without further ado, I would like to introduce the three amazing panelists we have tonight. I'd like to first introduce Akash Dhingra. He is joining all the way from Goa, India, and it's 7:30 a.m. in the morning right now for him. So props for waking up this early and joining. He was messaging me a few hours ago saying how he is so full of energy for this panel and couldn't get to sleep. So hopefully he's well rested. Akash is a sustainability consultant, self-leadership advocate, and photographer, and he spearheaded many initiatives, including a project called Unshakable Self-Belief. This is inspired by his own struggles of self-doubt, and he's interviewing people on how they overcame their self-doubt in order to fully see their self-worth and find meaning in life. He's also the creator of compassion cards, which I have a copy of here. This is a conversation-based card game designed to unlock the capacity for compassion and humanity. So jazz hands, applause for him. Next, I'd like to introduce Ahmad Jabbir. He is calling from Toronto, Canada, and he's also a member of Dynamically Speaking Toastmasters. And I have the pleasure of actually being one of his mentors and helping him along his journey of being a TEDx speaker. So next month, he will be presenting at TEDxRyersonU University with a talk, yes, with a talk entitled Why You Should Pursue Social Discomfort. His talk shares about his experience of meeting over 100 strangers from 89 different cities during the pandemic and the lessons he learned from that. He also works as part of the marketing team for Seek Discomfort, which is the apparel company of the YouTube channel Yes Theory. It's designed for people who are committed to chasing their wildest dreams and uncovering the beauty that lies outside of our comfort zone. And then last but not least, I'd like to introduce Shree Werner. She's calling from Austin, Texas in the United States. So there's actually a short story here of how her and I ended up connecting. So we met through a mutual connection on a platform called Lunch Club. And Lunch Club pairs you up with people to talk with each week. And during one of those fateful calls, I get on the call and the lady introduces herself as Amy and that she's a vice president at Adidas. So where else would I be talking with someone like her? So it was very surprising for me. But then Amy then connected me to John Werner, who is the co-founder of a company called Koya. And while talking with John, her wife Shree comes into the room, and then I invited Shree to be on my podcast. So Shree is the co-founder and chief kindness officer at Koya. And Koya is a social platform and app designed to create meaningful and intentional connections. She also runs the Fiesta Meetup group. This is the founders, investors, entrepreneurs, startup, techies, and Austin newcomers group. And as someone in her late 50s, a key message she wants to share is you're never too old or young or underqualified to take on new opportunities. Neither age nor lack of experience should limit or define you. So welcome, Shree. So we'll get into questions. So Norma is helping with timing today. So Norma, would you be able to put a timer for 10 minutes? And then you can display the green light at 8, yellow at 9, and then red light at 10. And then again, for the panelists, this is a normal part of a Toastmasters event. You don't need to feel rushed or freaked out. It's just to help us keep on track. So for the first question, loneliness is a painful experience and it can be difficult to make meaningful connections, especially during the past 2 years when our relationships have been disrupted by the pandemic. So what's a challenge you've had when it comes to making meaningful connections, and what steps did you take to overcome it? So we'll start with Shree and then we'll go to Akash and Ahmad. So Shree, take it away.
I think it's being intentional. And for myself, I mean, you know, the pandemic was really, it did a number on a lot of people. And I purposely decided that during that time, I would grow myself. And so like I took a course on the science of well-being by Laurie Santos. And I mean, you know, there's daily gratitude and random acts of kindness. And, you know, there were all these exercises that we had to do during the 10 weeks. And social connection was also one of them. And again, is that intentionality. I took a class on happiness, but eventually, I mean, the courses I was taking were great, and I was meeting a lot of people in those online platforms. But it was Lunch Club that really got me out of my comfort zone, and where I started really connecting with individuals. I would take 4 calls probably a week, 4 to 8. And but it wasn't just taking the calls, because that's just 1 hour. It's following up with people. I would follow up, and some people you have connections with and others you don't. So yeah, and being intentional, making a list of who you want to keep in touch with. So those were a few of the things, that I did intentionally during the pandemic. As things loosened up, it was inviting people into the house that I would meet that were here in Austin, new to Austin in particular. Everybody loves a home cooked meal, face-to-face interaction. So yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that, Shri. We'll go to Akash now. Joining us from
Hello,
India.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, nice. Thank you, Sherry, for a very relatable share. So I was thinking about these questions, and throughout these last 2 years, and also since 2017, because after I finished my master's, I came back to India and I was working a remote job. So this was before pandemic, and all my friends who I had grown up with were in different places. I was living in a very big city in Delhi, where 30 million people live. Still, loneliness was a very it was a very everyday feeling. So I was experiencing this for a long time, and one of the challenges that I faced was that when one is kind of wanting human connections, and it's natural to have human connections, but then it's easy to feel or become needy. And I think for some reason, when we are needy, human connections do not really happen. I don't really know what's the reason, but I think I have found a solution in kind of focusing on my body, my mind, and my soul or heart, call it whatever you want. But basically, trying to make a healthy relationship, secure relationship with oneself, and just focusing on what I would like to do, how I would like to spend my time. And after a while, just the human connections just form naturally, because it's like one of the common human needs. And so that's what I found in the last 4 or 5 years. I hadn't intentionally sought connections in the first 2-3 years, but in 2020, I took a career break, and this was also in the middle of the pandemic, and I traveled to Goa because I thought I wanted to do a lot of things. And here I was mostly focusing on myself, and that was a very good opportunity to meet other people and so on. So I think that's a challenge that I'd highlight. I think it's one of the beginning steps that one has to take. And I would resonate with what Cherry was saying. It has to be intentional at the end. So yeah, thank you, Richard.
Wonderful. So we'll go to Ahmad, and then we'll circle back through all 3 panelists to dig a bit deeper. So Ahmad, if you could share your thoughts on this question.
Yeah. Sherry, Akash, I loved what you both shared. And I wanted to say too, thanks, Richard, for creating this. I think this is already so cool. My gears are already turning, because connection is something I'm so darn passionate about. This question is actually my favorite question out of the set that you shared with us. And because it really, really hits home. In university, I experienced a lot of loneliness. It's something that I struggled with a lot. And Akash, what you shared earlier about when you feel needy, it's harder to make connections. I genuinely think that's so true, because that describes exactly me and how I felt at university. It's interesting because it's almost like making money. When you make a lot of money, it's easier to make more money. And the same thing goes when it comes to making connections. If we feel lonely and distant, it's harder to make those friendships. And now at a time in my life, the past 4 years where I have phenomenal connections around me compared to university. It's like they're coming left, right, and center, these connections. I'm like, where were all these great people and connections when I needed them in university? I wasn't meeting those people. And something I feel that has helped me the most, and I think it all goes back to combating that loneliness. And what it was is just talking about loneliness. Whatever I felt, I shared, whether it be going to therapy or even just talking to those closest to me about like how distant and I felt for a lot of things. And once I was able to create that, almost created like a foundation for myself. And after that, I was able to just start working with myself in many different ways. But it opens the door just by focusing on the way we feel and our loneliness. It ends up creating like a plethora of other options afterwards. And that's just the way that I've seen things.
Thank you for sharing that. And using very colorful vocabulary as well. So Shri, I wanted to circle back to you and get your sort of take after what Akash and Ahmad shared about this sort of neediness and its relationship to trying to make connections with people.
I totally related to that. And I think earlier in my life, I probably tried really hard. And that does kind of put up a barrier, like, you know, when people sense that. Also, I think that when you go into relationships with more of a kind of like a servant's attitude, like what can I give versus what can I get, there tends to be more of a connection. So, you know, I probably have more connections now than I've ever had. And it's not something that I sought out to do. It's like when you start giving and pouring into other people, others notice. And I think it was fueled by just this whole loneliness crisis that has been going on pre-pandemic and into the pandemic. And I think the fact that we're talking about it. People are talking about it. It's okay. You know, every conversation that tends to come up, that people will kind of bring in loneliness and how they have struggled. So it's being normalized. And I think when you normalize something, then you're able to find solutions to help with the problem. So in connecting.
Yeah, and also one point too, Shree's introduced me to many books. I have 2 of them with me right now. One's We Should Get Together, and the other one is Friendship in the Age of Loneliness. So I'm wondering, Shree, if you wanted to talk about either of those books as well, because there's a whole ecosystem of people in this field of trying to make meaningful connections.
Right. Well, so Kat Vielis is actually one of our advisors, and she's both her and Smiley, and they're friends actually. And what's really cool about both of them is just the intentionality behind it. I think oftentimes we have these expectations that more is better. You know, you can have a lot of people around you, but not really be connected. So I think it's, you know, the being intentional with 1 or 2 people and going deep. And so I think both of them talk about that in their books. And what I love about, because I had Adam's book right here too. What I like about it is it's for a millennial. I mean, like the chapters are super short and they're attention grabbing. And I think you can relate. And so you just take 1 or 2 things from a book that you read and ask yourself, how can I apply this to my life? Where am I coming up short? Where can I expand in this area?
Wonderful. So I see the red light. So we'll segue to the next question. So I envision connections as a sort of thread which intersects and crisscrosses and loops and is intertwined with the thread of other people, and it forms this rich like tapestry of human experience. So by meeting new people, our threads intersect. Sometimes we lose contact with people, sometimes we meet with new ones, and sometimes we loop back and reconnect. So I'm wondering then for you, how have you deepened existing relationships, rekindled old ones, or created new ones during the past 2 years? And this time we'll go Akash, Ahmed, and then Shri.
Hi. Yeah, thank you, Richard, for the question. And it's a really good one because I think even outside of the pandemic, this question is very relevant. And I think one of the analogies that really helped me understand how connections evolve is this idea of software updates. So, I've grown up with some childhood friends, and then I went for education abroad, or I did some other things, and suddenly there was a distance. And then when we come back and meet each other, it's like each of us have not gotten a software update of how each of us has evolved, and we kind of have stories and ideas of how the other person is. So I think that sometimes creates a risk of losing connection. I think everyone, at least in my sort of stage of life, everyone has been evolving, and so after a while they come to realize, okay, people are different and people are also constantly evolving. So every day is a new opportunity to learn something new about them. So I would say like this has been one of the blockades for deepening connections. And in the course of the pandemic, I got the opportunity to kind of be a bit more vulnerable and also realize how I could be judgmental to other people and to my old friends. And I also kind of gave them the space. Hey, you're this new person now. I want to get to know you. So I think with that kind of frame of mind, it was easier to deepen existing relationships. And I'm very glad that I got the opportunity to do that with friends, even my family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's where I'll pause.
Wonderful. Ahmed, you can continue this thread.
Yeah, I definitely think this one's also a very interesting one for myself. I feel lucky because actually that's how I met you, Akash, because of the pandemic and what had happened. So for those of you that don't know, and I guess Richard spoke about this earlier, is a few weeks into the pandemic, I was feeling really exhausted, tired, and already just feeling disconnected with so many people. So I started a project. I posted in this Facebook group with about 150,000 members. I'm like, hey, I want to meet people from all over the world and hear their stories. And because of that, it ended up becoming like a 7-month-long project where I ended up meeting people from 89 cities and 45 countries. And Akash ended up being, I think the 85th person, I believe. I forgot the exact
83.
number now. 83, nice. And for Akash, I had actually posted in a second Facebook group. It was like I posted in one, met about 70 people, then I posted in a second one. And so definitely had a great spark with Akash, and I'm glad, and I think it just shows the amount of doors that the pandemic has opened. And not only have I gotten a chance to meet so many people through this project, but also I ended up creating so much more deeper connections with the friends that I have. In regards to the part of the question where it rekindled friendships that passed, I think I didn't have any rekindled friendships. If a friendship had almost like expired before the pandemic, it didn't restart. I just was aiming for new ones, and I definitely really got that. And it just, I think a consistent theme that I noticed with everybody that I was meeting from around the world was just how many similarities there were. Like no matter which country or city that I was speaking to, we were all experiencing this unified feeling during the pandemic. Especially, I feel lucky because I got a chance to speak to them at the beginning of the pandemic, where all those new feelings were happening. So, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful project. And just part of the story of how I met Ahmed and Akash as well. I was interviewing Ahmed for my podcast, and then Ahmed told me, it's like, hey, you need to meet Akash, because Ahmed was being interviewed by Akash earlier for his project of unshakable self-belief. So I ended up getting connected with Akash, and now we're all doing a panel together. So it's just
Funny enough,
yeah.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Funny enough, there were actually back-to-back meetings. I had a meeting with Akash for his project, and literally an hour after Richard, I'm like, there's such a similar theme with these conversations. They need to connect. So I think it's so awesome and beautiful just to see all of us together right now again.
Yes, it shows your point about how there's all these people around the world, but there's also lots of common ground and common threads that unite us together. So for Shri, how have you deepened existing relationships or rekindled old ones or started new ones? Oh, you're muted. Let me.
There it is. So rekindle in October, just this past October, I actually went back to my 40th high school reunion. That's how old I am. And so I was able to see some girlfriends I haven't seen in like 30 something years, which was a lot of fun. And I mean, out of that, several of us are like, let's do it again. So that was fun. To your point, I think that on the tapestry aspect, it's important that we, like with Lunch Club, I was meeting people, and then if I felt like there was a connection or synergy that I had with somebody else, I would connect them with somebody. And it's in that process that, you know, that tapestry becomes a little bit more messier on the back, but then it comes back on the front, and it's this like beautiful picture. And these are people I would have never met. I mean, from all over the place. And then when I started doing the meetup, I mean, all of a sudden, these are relationships. I mean, we're all founders, but I'm in such a different season of life. And I think that that's also really important to take in consideration, is that we do go through these different seasons from high school, college, and we can't carry all of those over, but like figuring out which relationships are important to go back to and reconnect with, because sometimes someone will pop into my head. And I think that that's a prompting that we have to reach out to that person, because many times I've done that, and the person that I reached out to has been like going through something really difficult. And had I not taken that prompting of, you know, when that person popped up, you know, I would have missed out on that opportunity of being able to share in that. So I love your visual of the tapestry. I think it's, you know, a beautiful thing. I think Corey Ten Boom kind of used that one time in an analogy. So
Awesome. Yeah, and thank you, Shri, because you've connected me with a few folks as well, other like coaches, which have been wonderful to get in touch with. Also, what you're talking about, like someone coming to mind and then reaching out to them, this ties to what you're doing at Koya. So for people that aren't familiar with what Koya is, could you explain what that platform does?
Sure. So we started Koya it's a hyper-personal connection platform. So if you're thinking about somebody that is part of your friend group, you can actually reach out to them with a personalized video or audio message, letting them know and attaching an optional gift to it. I kind of like to say it's Venmo meets Pokemon Go and Hallmark, because you're creating your own personalized message.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. I'm going to circle back to another question to Akash. I know part of this too, of meeting new people. And when we did our podcast together, you had one story you shared with me is you were at a hostel and there's these 20 strangers there. And to overcome your fear of rejection, you wanted to just ask everyone if you could hug them. So I wonder if you could share that story.
Yeah, I think that's a very proud moment in life. I've really realized that there are two ways of existing, either from a place of fear or from a place of compassion. And I really wanted to listen to why is it that I have fear. And I had a lot of beliefs about myself, how maybe I am not deserving of certain things, or maybe I'm not the right person, maybe I don't look good, and so on and so on. And I really wanted to challenge that. And of course, growing up, there was this conditioning, or it's not like I was born and suddenly I had these thoughts. So I thought, what would be the smallest thing that I could do? And this was when I had taken a career break and I moved to Goa, and I was sitting in a hostel. There were like 20 people from strangers from like the rest of India. And I thought the thing that I could do probably right now is ask everyone if I can hug them. And that's not to really, make anyone uncomfortable, but just, offer a hug and see what happens. And if someone says no, that's fine. I can accept that. And so I ended up hugging everyone. No one actually said no. So that was the surprising thing to me. There was this one person who was like, why? And I told him, no reason. If you want it, you can have it. If not, that's fine. And suddenly he sprang up like he's been wanting a hug all his life. So I think that really just proved to me that when if I have to make connections, I have to be a little bit vulnerable and, go out and be intentional. And the only thing that stops me is my own thoughts and beliefs about myself. But I think they're hard to change. And I think to change them, I need new memories, new experiences. So I was trying to make those experiences. And now every time, if I feel, oh, okay, should I go and, say hi to someone or something? I have this memory in my mind that nothing stopping me. There's nothing wrong with me and so on. So I would say, in compared to like everyone else, my journey has been a little bit more about how can I be a bit more self-loving, self-believing, and through that, be with people and also exist in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Thank you,
so
Richard.
if we were all together in a room today, I'd also ask for us to hug, but you're in India, so one day I'll come visit you. So we'll move on to the next question. So it's the beginning of 2022 now, and the future is still filled with uncertainty, but also opportunities depending on how you choose to see it. And making meaningful connections will still continue to be important as part of our life and well-being. So, but people might be still struggling with how to go about making these connections. So there's been lots of helpful insights shared so far, but the next question I'd like to ask is, imagine you were standing up on a stage delivering a TED Talk to thousands of people. What strategies or advice would you share on how to make meaningful connections online and in person? So we'll start with Ahmad, Shri, and then Akash.
Awesome. Love this. Also, before I start, Akash, I just wanted to say I love that hug story. I think that's so damn cool. In regards to, I'll use this to practice what I'll be sharing in my TEDx. So I appreciate this stage, and hopefully someone could take something from what I share right now. I've noticed, I think 4 things can be very, very helpful when it comes to making connections. And the first is I see connections and meeting people almost like lemons, like someone literally hands you a lemon, but making like a deeper, more meaningful connection is the lemonade. So I think, so it's like we can get these lemons and it's great, but once we actually start getting deeper with these people, that's when we can start to have really great tasting, delicious lemonade. And I think that's the first thing that we see. And there's always like, oh, we have to have so many friends and connections and whatnot. I know it's something that we hear about a lot, but it's, in my opinion, it's always quality over quantity. That's the first thing. The second, it's understanding that, like, similar to, I guess, the way that Akash was going into that experience with him with the hugs, is that, well, in his case, everyone said yes. But a lot of times, sometimes we reach out, we try to make connections. People aren't going to be that receptive. And I think it's just about understanding that there's going to be a law of averages. And some people, they're going to say yes, but some others. And it has nothing to do with us, and it's not personal. The third, and this one took me a while to grasp, is that it's called social skills. And a lot of the times we have like this fixed mindset where we think like, whatever social skills I have, it's there for the rest of my life. But it's called social skills, meaning there's ways for us to grow it, and it's like a muscle. And the more that we practice and talking to people and trying to approach people and even creating those meaningful connections, we get better at it over time. And so that's something that was a huge breakthrough moment for me to realize. And the last, and this one was the most difficult one for me to understand, is going with positive environments in our life. I was surrounded by, I feel, a lot of people that weren't that supportive when I was younger. And so whenever I was trying to make those connections, it's like I was reciprocated by very almost like negative stimuli. And so whenever, if we're trying to do something, especially when it comes to making connections or anything new for that matter, I think we need a very positive, supportive environment, especially when we're getting off of our feet and kicking off. And so I think making sure that we have and we're throwing ourselves in environments that are going to be positive and supportive. So yeah, quality over quantity, law of averages, being patient with ourselves and understanding that it's social skills, and being around a very positive environment. That's the way I see connections.
Thank you. Thank you for giving your 4 tips and your mini TEDx talk. Also, one thing I wanted to point out too is I love all the interaction that's happening in the chat, because really I want this event to be a positive environment where you can connect with new people as well. So if there's someone you're connecting with, resonating with in the chat, like feel free to exchange contact info, because you don't know what can come out of this. So I'll next move to Shri to get your thoughts on strategies and advice.
I mean, awesome insight. I too had focus on quality over quantity, because you know, that's where the meaningful part of connection comes in. And I also put be the initiator, reach out. I think so often we're waiting for people to reach out to us. I know prior to the pandemic, I was kind of like in this rut where I felt like I was always initiating and having people over to my house, and nobody ever reciprocated. Well, so what? I mean, I'm the one who benefits by being the initiator and having people into my home. And that's the other thing too, is I think when you open your space, relationships go to a completely different level than if you're always going out and about, because it's quieter. You don't have someone like waiting on you and stuff like that. So I actually tomorrow night I do a monthly dinner I try and bring people that I've met at my event, and I usually get 8 different people to come over, so that they can get to know each other, because it's not always about me, it's about them connecting too. I always choose in-person over virtual type of interactions. I think that's always best, because when you're with somebody, the connection actually goes deeper, because there's this connection because of just being in the presence of a person. I can't have that. I mean, like, to your hug story, I mean, I am a hugger. When people come into my house, I hug them. When I meet people out, I hug them and stuff like that. And then in regards to technology, because I mean, it's here to stay, I think that it's using it to maintain relationships and engage with people in a meaningful way. So, looking for ways to offer a kind word of encouragement, congratulating them on maybe a promotion or, their podcast. I mean, reaching out to you like, hey, way to go, this is awesome. And then also sending personal notes, kind of going back to some of the older ways of doing things. There's nothing like getting something in the mail from somebody just saying, hey, I was thinking about you. And obviously being authentic. That's what I've loved about this, hearing y'all's replies and stuff. It's just been so authentic. So yeah, that's kind of what I would say. Yeah.
Wonderful. Again, I wish I could be over at your house for dinner. One day I'll come visit Austin.
One day.
And then Akash to round us out, if you could share your thoughts.
Yeah, yes. So I think if you can allow me, Richard, I have a very small 30 seconds to 1 minute of an experiment. And
Sure.
I was going to use the idea of a raisin, but I'll take lemons since you brought them up, Ahmad. So everyone, like, close your eyes and just, like, picture a lemon. It's this yellow round object, and picture that you are now cutting this lemon. You take a small slice, the juices kind of come out on the sides of the blade, and then you can see the follicles inside, right? You want to make a lemonade, so you are taking that slice of the lemon, putting different slices. I hope you have that visualization very well in your mind. I just want to ask everyone one question. Do they feel something in their mouth? Are you salivating? Do you have a reaction in your body to this visualization? Okay. So I just wanted to say that the kind of thoughts we have, our body reacts to it, like, very instantly. And, like, I think this lemon is a good example. So when it comes to, like, strategies and making meaningful connections, I always think that the first step is to just say hi.
Mhm.
Like, let's say, if I'm in and I want to talk to my thoughts that are stopping me, and I just wanted to kind of say that our body reacts to those thoughts, and to kind of change those thoughts, a good way is to also work on the body. So give love to the body, whatever it is, exercise, doing something that you love. And I think it slowly builds confidence in one's own existence. And that will drive the shift. It's, of course, like, one of the strategies. The other is to, to dare to try, because there would be failures, but I think there's a lot of power in daring. And the third one is to say yes to the opportunities that already surround you and welcome you. So I think Lunch Club, everyone has used it, me as well. That's a brilliant like, tool to connect with people. And I would say, like, be kind and compassionate, but of course with boundaries. So be kind to yourself as well. These are probably my suggestions.
Yes, that was very heartwarming. And thanks for doing that exercise. Maybe, Ahmad, you'll incorporate this as part of your TEDx talk for February. So I'd like to transition now into Q&A, because I still want to give the audience time to ask questions. So we'll do approximately 15 minutes of Q&A. So Norma, if you could put a timer for 15 minutes, display the green light at 13, yellow at 14, and then red at 15. So if you have a questions you'd like to ask, the way we'll do this is you can use the raise hand function. So this is in the reactions tab at the bottom. And if you press raise hand, then I'll be able to call your name, and then you can unmute yourself and ask the question to one of the panelists or all of the panelists. So I see that Dana has her hand up. So go ahead, Dana.
Okay, here's a question. Have any of you ever been in a situation with connection where you have basically, like, really reached out, prioritized your time with certain people, and then the reaction from them is that it's too much? Have you ever, does that make sense, my question? Basically, like, you put forth all your effort, you really want to build that relationship, and they come back with kind of like backup kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who, anyone can answer that.
Yes, anyone, if you want to take Dana's question.
I would
Yeah,
say,
I could.
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, sure. No, you go ahead. I'll go after you.
I was gonna say, earlier in life, I've had that happen, and it's hard not to take it personally. But I mean, I now know that when that happens, a lot of times it's something that person is experiencing, and it's not about me. So I think it's important not to take it personally, and maybe even ask, like, is there a reason for this? I'm sure the person wouldn't be able to really explain it, because they probably don't know what's going on with themselves either. So yeah, go ahead, Akash.
Thank you, Sherry. Yeah, I think clarifying how are they feeling, the way we are interacting with them, makes things clear. So I resonate with it. I think this is a very, like, common challenge, and, like, one of the ways to make meaningful connections is through shared experiences. So if we can make memories together, then we can have those connections. But I think people are often having different priorities, and then it's okay to let that slide. I think I would come back to the first question, that it's like sometimes when we're really wanting to make connection, I'm not saying that one is always needy, but if there are different priorities, then it's just that, or maybe they are wanting something else, and then it's okay to like let that slide, because then it becomes kind of forced. Maybe they have their own reasons, and I think the word that comes to mind is kind of suffocation. I'm not saying like this is the universal experience, but I've had sometimes when, for example, there's this, when I moved to Goa, I was alone as well. There were many people around, and I wanted to make friends with this guy because he was really into astronomy, and I really like it. And he has a telescope at his place. So I was like, okay, it would be fun to like use that telescope. But I think I asked him once, and he was like, yeah, soon later. And then I didn't push him after that because I didn't think it would lead to anything. But over the time, we become friends now. Actually, he's the one who donated his old guitar to me, so I've been playing it. So I think it just is like flows. So hopefully that answered.
Yeah, thank you. Ahmed, I'm going to suggest that I think you want to answer as well, but I'm going to keep going to the other people that have their hands raised, because I would like to get through all of them to give their chance to answer. So Kevin, go ahead.
Thanks, Richard. Great night, everybody. I just wanted to ask a question of, I have a family member, but this could apply to a friend or family member who's in a real rut. And as we're coming out of the pandemic, they're like trying to come up with another excuse as to why they can't go out and see people. They just haven't worked that muscle in a long time. And I can see that they're in a rut and not really wanting to socialize. They've kind of become accustomed to not working that muscle. And especially if these are family members that are too far away for me to go out with them, how can I encourage them to be more social, to maybe take a different perspective and take a bit of that social risk?
Ahmed, maybe you can take that, because you talked about exercising your social skills earlier.
Right. Great. Definitely. I love that question, Kevin. I think it goes back to what I answered in the beginning, and this is just how I approach it. I'm sure there's many different ways of approaching it, but I think what's helped me when I was in my rut and when I wasn't really exercising my social skills muscle was to start off with the foundation of checking in and talking to people about how they feel. Because about when we figure out where the person is at emotionally, I think once they create that base, and by developing that connection with you or with whoever it is, it's almost like a baby step in itself, but it's letting go of our walls and hearing the person as to where they are and why they feel the way that they feel. And then from there, it becomes, I think we create opportunities, like whether it be Toastmasters or other things to help practice that. And that's just the way that I've approached it, but just really starting with the way that I feel first and talking to someone about it. And then it becomes easier. That's the way that I found it.
Mm-hmm. Shri or Akash, if you wanted to add anything.
That's good advice.
I think the distance makes it hard. I mean, if it was someone, that you could actually go and meet for coffee or something like that, that would make it easier. But I think understanding what the underlying problem is, I mean, like, are they fearful, or, in addressing that part of it. Because my in-laws live in Louisiana, and I mean, they're struggling right now about going out, and it's fear-based,
This family member has like this spotlight effect, like, well, everyone's going to be talking about me or looking about me, and it's definitely going to be bad, whatever they're thinking. And I'm like, I talk positively behind your back all the time. But yeah, I think that there's just working to dispel those kind of assumptions. But I see so many cool hands up. I see 1, 2, 3, 4 beside me, so I don't want to hog all the space here. But
well,
thank you.
Thanks for your question, Kevin, and thanks for the answers. We'll go to Alif. Apologies if I'm pronouncing your name wrong.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hello.
Hello. I just had the greatest chicken shawarma ever, so I just want to shout that out at the beginning. Anyways, My question is, I post a lot of content on LinkedIn, and because of that, a lot of people message me and everything, and they want to go on calls with me, and I love making new connections as well. But also, I find that my time is also limited. So my question to you is, how do I prioritize who to go on calls with and who not to, and not feel guilty about the process?
Who wants to take that question? Everyone's deep in thought. I think you asked the thought-provoking question.
Yeah, I think it's like such a subjective thing, no? Like our own criteria. If I were at your place, Alif, hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I think it really matters what's the intention of the meeting, and it sounds like you're meeting for professional reasons. So I think for that, the criteria for should I meet this person or not is a little different. And if it's just for socializing, or let's say for example, how Ahmad met 100 strangers and there was no criteria other than, hey, do you want to talk to me, and I'd love to talk to you as well. So I'm not sure what to say really, at least in this context, for professional reasons. Ahmad or Sherry, do you feel like you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think candidly that like if you set up so many calls a week that could be allocated to meeting with somebody. So like on your I know you can block out like 15-minute segments and maybe do like 2 or 3 of those, whatever your limit is. But then that way you're guarding your time, which is really precious, and yet you're making availability for some new possibilities of connection that might be important to somebody else, and it might turn into something else. So, yeah, that's one way to guard your, put guardrails around it.
Thank you for your question. I see 3 other hands up, so I'd like to be able to try to get to everyone. So Tony, I'm glad you could come, Tony. Tony is also an author. I have his book here. It's Talk to More People. He's the first person on my podcast as well. So anyway, go ahead, Tony, with your question.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Richard, for hosting this panel discussion, and thanks to all the speakers for this really excellent conversation. I'm very much enjoying it, and I do have some experience in meeting people and have done a little bit of research on that myself. But I also wanted to ask your panelists, and actually I'll direct this to Sharif for starters. What is a tip that you would give to someone who wants to kind of flex that muscle of meeting new people, like in the real world, not online, but they don't know where to start because it just seems too overwhelming. So what is like kind of a foot in the door or a small starter tip that you would offer for someone who wants to start learning how to connect with people in person?
We have organizations like Meetup, which I discovered back in July, or Eventbrite. And there's so many opportunities out there. I think you have to limit yourself and figure out like what it is that's going to bring life to you, because I think when you become alive and you're enjoying something, that carries forth in those connections. And so I would say go look on Meetup or Eventbrite and see what things are out there that you can kind of ease yourself into. I had an event. So people are wanting to get back out there. Our event for Fiesta on last Tuesday, we had over 150 show up in person. So, people are wanting to be out and about again.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, Isabel.
Hi, I'm just wondering, how do you mitigate, so for me personally, I've kind of missed a lot of those like golden years. I'm now almost gonna turn 20 this coming year, which in Canada, that's drinking age was 18. So I've missed effectively the golden years, but I'm also immunocompromised. So mitigating that in a pandemic and trying to explain to people that I don't want in-person interaction, I don't know, I feel like that immediately puts up a wall. How do you go about that then, like meeting people online still in a way that's safe. I just was wondering if any of these panelists have any recommendations.
Thanks for your question.
I feel for you. My daughter has her best friend is in the same situation, and I mean she can't go out like her, my daughter's, because it does put her health at risk. And so, I mean, you have to take care of yourself. That's a priority. But what she has done is she has a handful of people who love and care deeply for her. And so they're very careful to not put themselves into crazy situations so that they can be with her, if that makes any sense. So the one-on-one is a little bit more comfortable for her than being out in the crowd. So, I mean, find those people. And then lunch club, I mean, is a great way to meet people. I highly recommend, lunch club, and Meetup also has virtual meetings. It's not all in person.
Akash or Ahmed, if there's anything you wanted to add. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the person who shared. I forget their name right now. Is it Isabel? Yeah, thank you, Isabel, for sharing. And while it's unrelatable, I think I can, from the top of my mind, think of some examples. I have a friend who has been going through a number of medical journeys, and she's not able to also go out that much and like physically meet people. And throughout this time, and she and I met on lunch club actually, so that's very interesting. And when I talk to her, she tells me that she has a lot of friends online that she has met through different initiatives. She has a friend who they only write letters to each other. So I'm not trying to like say, oh, there's only the only way possible is through digital connections, but I think there's a lot of options in finding connections, long-term ones in the digital world. Yeah, and I resonate with what Sherry was saying. Thank you again, Isabel, for sharing the question.
Okay, we'll take one final question from Kai.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, then thank you all for your time. And I want to ask Ahmad, and I know you work for Seek Discomfort, which I am currently wearing right now. I would love to hear your story on how you were able to connect with the people at Seek Discomfort, or Yes Theory, and how you were able to lead that to where you are right now.
You could keep it to a minute. Sorry.
Sure. So just to make sure I understood that you want to hear my story as to how I got connected to them, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So it actually, I believe Richard was going to ask that because of time. We didn't. So I'll make this quick because I really honed the theme of connection to get there. And that I made sure to show how passionate I was. And I think it's a general theme when it comes to connection. When we show we're very passionate, sometimes it does show and people see that. And what I had done is during my interview is I made a whole process where I got a bunch of ideas, got a briefcase, spray painted the logo, hired an FBI agent to deliver the briefcase that I made, and they sent it at the time of the interview, and just to show like the level of passion. And I think that's a general theme that's again shown in everyday connections. If we just go up to somebody and we're like, oh, this, that, we seem very casual, like, or playing hard to get, I think it really can slow us down, but when we show our passion, it helps out. And so I think it's really interesting you asked that, as it definitely has an overarching theme with everyday connections.
Mm-hmm. So one thing I will encourage Kai and also the other attendees as well is you can contact these panelists. So for the attendees today, I will be sending up a follow-up email with their contact information. And panelists, you're also welcome to leave your contact info in the chat as well if folks want to reach out to you with further discussions, questions, thanking you. So again, big thank you for all my panelists, Shri, Akash, and Ahmed, for sharing all your insights. If we could just give them a round of applause. So feel free to type into the chat what you thought of the event. And thank you for this opportunity to host this. I'm so glad that you're able to join me, and I hope that you can take all their insights and find more excuses to connect with people. Again, I believe you never know how any connection can transform your life. So I'll be doing similar events like this in the future, so keep an eye out for that. Making friends and deeper connections can be difficult, but also you don't have to tackle it alone, as mentioned by all the panelists today. So my mission is all about making meaningful connections easier. So for me personally, I do offer coaching and workshops and public speaking, but also I can connect you with other resources and practitioners in this field as well as making connections. So you can just shoot me an email or message me. I'll put my email into the chat. And yeah, I hope to see you at a future event where our lives can intersect again. So that concludes the official portion of our panel discussion. If you need to leave, go ahead. Wishing you a good night or good morning, depending on where you are. And then for people that are staying behind, I'll be hosting some informal socializing. So we'll just give a minute or two for people to filter out. But yeah, Shri, Ahmed, Akash, if you want to say thank you, whatever you want to say to the attendees.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. And it was really a lot of fun.
Thank you, Shri.
Yeah, thank you. It was definitely so fun. Very, I don't know about you, Sherry, Akash, it was a very fast hour. I can't believe that was an hour. And definitely, thank you to Richard. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Richard. I thought I'd be falling asleep in the middle of it. Not while we were talking, but early in the morning, because I was like, oh shit, I haven't had that much sleep today. But yeah, as you were saying, but it flew by and it was super fun. I hope whatever we shared, it was relatable and useful, and feel free to reach out for anything else. I'm so excited actually to see how all three of you have also been evolving in your own lives, especially Richard and Ahmad, because I know you from past. Yeah, nice.
Awesome.